great privilege now to be able to welcome another person who is hugely influential in my own cello life. I'd like to introduce one of my former teachers, Mr. Alan Stepansky, and his piano collaborator, Natasha Kislenko.
Sonata. First of all, Peter, thanks for the reminder about the rock stop, because I was about to not use one, and I am going to use one, so hopefully that means I won't be replaced. And secondly, I'd just like to say an incredibly heartfelt thank you to everyone here for inviting me this year, particularly to Peter, who I've always been his biggest fan, to tell you the truth. And I couldn't be prouder of him in his new role here. And I think you're all very lucky to have him in incredibly good hands. I'd also like to thank Elizabeth and Paul for their generosity, and everyone who's been so wonderful. And of course, I want to thank Natasha in advance for her wonderful collaboration. So we're going to start with Debussy. about color and the different effects that you can get with the cello that aren't just so normal. That was written in 1915. And you can imagine what a revolutionary sound that was, and to think about writing for the cello in that way, how different that was from, say, a Beethoven sonata or a Brahms sonata even. It's very, 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 very impressionistic, and it's full of action. Things happen very fast in this music. So I wanted to play the next piece, which is written by Nadia Boulanger. I don't know if a lot of you have heard of her, but this piece actually was written almost the same year, 1914, as the Debussy. It has a very different atmosphere to it. It's probably easier to listen to the first time, but it's so evocative of the style of that period and the French style. Ms. Boulanger, of course, is one of the earliest women composers that we were fortunate enough to be able to play. And interestingly, she had a sister named Lily Boulanger. They were both musicians, both composers. Lily was a really even more prolific composer, and unfortunately she passed away very young, and Nadia was left, and after her sister died, she didn't write any more music. And what she became was probably the most famous teacher of composition in history. And she taught everybody. They all came to her in Paris. If you wanted to be a composer, you studied with Nadia Boulanger, including people like Aaron Copland and George Gershwin, Burt Bacharach. Everybody came. And, but she was a wonderful composer, and we're so lucky as cellists that she wrote these three pieces for cello and piano. Thrilled to play them for you now. just started playing them this year, and I think they're so wonderful for the cello. It's such a singing sound, and I think they're fun, the last one, and I think the first one is so heartfelt, and I think the second one is so reassuring and beautiful. So thank you for letting me play this for you. Since this is a cello institute, I thought it would be nice to play some solo Bach for you today. Bach is, of course, the Bible of cello, and there are 6 suites. I thought it would be interesting, since I have such a wonderful pianist to play with, to hear the cello without piano, and to hear how this composer makes it okay that we're just hearing the piano. Hopefully we don't miss the pianist too much when we hear it. And you know, Bach was such a genius that he was able to do this in different ways. And these 3 movements that I've chosen have sort of a different, each one is using the cello in a different way and making it possible for the solo single cello to sound like something that's complete, that's bigger than just this one voice. So Bach was thinking, well, how can I take this instrument that usually plays either a bass line or a single line, and how can I make it kind of do everything? So the first movement of this E-flat suite is written in this very unusual way. It's different from all the other suites. I don't know if you can see this, but the music is, it doesn't look like a cello part. The notes are going like this, like that. And what Bach has done here is he has so skillfully allowed us to play both a bass line and a melody. And in this case, he is really imitating the organ. So you'll hear me play in this bass notes in one register. This piece starts with this, E flat, and then jumps to here and plays the notes of a chord. And then we hear that bass line again. So we hear that, and of course we don't want to play so obviously like that. So what he's done is made it possible through the changes of the parts of the cello that he's using to hear a continuous bass line in our minds and the chords. So you can imagine, you know, an organ that has a, you know, they call it a pedal tone, which is where they actually put their foot down on a pedal and hold a long note. So in this piece, he's giving the impression by continually returning to that bass note that that bass note is being held the whole time, and then up here they go da 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 dee da dee da with the chords. I hope you'll see that. Then there's some very virtuosic writing in the middle. It's kind of very typical of keyboard writing at that time. And of course, Bach he didn't play the cello. He was the greatest keyboard player of the time. So that's one. Then the second movement I'm going to play is the Courante, which is a wonderful dance. In that movement, he doesn't have to do much of anything, but if you play it with the right sense of timing and the right sense of emphasis, you can again hear multiple voices at the same time. It's a very inventive movement, very, very dance-like. And the last movement that I play is a little unusual. I'm ending with the Sarabande, which is the slow movement today. But that, to me, is one of the most beautiful things in the suite. It's all great. You know, I often say that if Bach had only written one movement of one of these cello suites, he'd still be considered the greatest composer of all time. Because every single movement is perfect and unique and brilliant and creative. In the Sarabande, I hope you'll hear that there's a melody and there's a bass line, an implied bass. Sometimes he asks the people listening to sort of remember a note while you're playing something else. So try to listen to that way. You sort of remember something that you've just heard. Maybe it's continuing, maybe it's you're hearing the next note in the voicing and the reading. But it's the greatest thing, and I hope you'll like it. fun as that was, I'm really happy to have a pianist to play with again. So, thought you might like to know one small thing about my cello. It's a very old cello, made in 1708, and it's made by a maker named Peter Rambouts from Amsterdam, who is considered one of the great Dutch cello makers, and I'm very lucky to have it. An interesting fact about this cello is that the purfling, which on most of your cellos is made of ebony, on this cello, typical of that period, it's made of whale bone, an actual bone of a whale, which must have been swimming around in the ocean around in the 1600s sometime. And then that bone was used for this. It's a very hard substance, and it's a pretty striking characteristic of my cello to have this beautiful double purfling made of whale bone. I was also told once that because it's very wide from one side to the other like this, and there's a lot of room in between the F holes, that this cello might have been used or could be used as a 5-string cello, which would, because it could accommodate a larger bridge with a 5th string very easily. And if you, when you get to play the 5th suite of Bach, that's written for a 5-string cello. And this, you could do it on this one if you changed the bridge and added a string. But it's interesting to know that this cello was made before the Bach suite that I just played was written.
Yeah.
So anyway, the beautiful songs that we're about to play, and I say songs because they are songs. They were written for voice and piano by Mr. DeFaya, and then they were put into a version for violin and piano, and then the violin version was transcribed for a cello version. So you're kind of getting something that's many times removed. But these are the most wonderful songs, full of character, the Spanish character. They're really wonderful. And you know, to prepare this piece, when I learned it years ago, I listened to cellists, I listened to violinists play it, but I most importantly listened to singers who actually sing the songs. And you get so much out of that in terms of how you play it. And really, this instrument is all about imitating a voice always. So this, we get to do it very directly. And I hope you'll get to see, there are some parts where I join in the accompanying figures, so that doesn't sound much like a voice, but then you'll see I try to be that singer. And if you can imagine words to these wonderful songs, they each have a different character. That's a great way of listening to this piece. Very happy to have been here today. Thank you so much, and hope you enjoy the Defy. encore maybe the most famous cello piece of all, the Swan by Saint-Saëns from the Carnival of the Animals.